holding the regime accountable.
Right, not focused on building a legal case and the reason that this is coming up is because people in the UN system and outside the UN system say that in order to act within international law, there's got to be some kind of authorization. Even the Bush administration had a resolution on Iraq. Now, there were differences in interpretation over what consequences meant, but they had a piece of paper.
Well, first, I would in no way compare this at all, period, to Iraq. So let's set that aside. And if you want to talk more about that, I can. But what I will say is we are making decisions that are in our national security interests. We are consulting with our allies and partners, including the UN. Right. But we do not believe that the Syrian regime should be able to hide behind a UN Security Council process here that the Russians have prevented from holding the regime accountable, period.
I don't want to get into a comparison of the circumstances with Iraq, but I do want to make the point, or have you address the point, that the Bush administration was not known for being a particularly big fan of the United Nations, and yet they sought and won a resolution that they thought, no, not many other people thought, that gave them the authority, the legal justification to invade Iraq.
Well, this administration
claimed exactly that their interpretation was that resolution, which called for severe consequences, gave them the legal authorization. Mm-hmm. This administration, which has made it a point to say that it wants to work with the UN and work within the international system, headed by a president who won a Nobel Peace Prize, is now saying that it's not even worth the effort to try to get that kind of an authorization.
It's not that it's not worth the effort, Matt. It's that we are
You just say that there's no avenue. You don't see a point. There's no avenue
because
forward.
You just said that the Russians are never going to sign on to anything, so it's not that it's not worth the effort, that we know what the outcome will be. And the Russians demonstrated this morning that they are not interested in holding the Syrian regime accountable here. But I will say...
So in the playground of international diplomacy here, you don't get what you want, you're going to take your ball and go home. That's right.
Actually, I would strongly disagree with that. You look at the dozens and dozens of calls and discussions that Secretary Kerry, the President, Secretary Hegel, have had with our counterparts across the world, whether it's NATO, the Arab League, a host of countries in the Middle East, in Europe, elsewhere. Clearly, we are consulting the international community and a broad range of international partners on the best course forward. Okay. The UN isn't the only international body that we're consulting here, but again, we continue talking to the Secretary General as well. So it's not like we are not engaging in high-level, sustained consultations with our diplomatic partners. In fact, it's actually the opposite.
Okay, so you think that there is another avenue to get a legal.
Again, I'm not going to do any sort of legal analysis at all, period, from this podium today.
Follow up on that. Can you run through the Secretary's recent